Meeting to order. School Committee, November 9th, 2022. First, I'd like to give the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First off, we will be having a vote to go into executive session. The school committee will be in executive session to discuss strategic strategy pertaining to collective bargaining issues, which will have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if the discussion is held in open session. And I'd like to read a motion for us to vote on. This is to move to go into executive session to comply with or act under the authority of 603 CMR 23.09 pursuant to the General Laws of Massachusetts, C 71 34D. The committee will return to open session following this. Could I have a motion to accept this motion?
So moved.
No, second?
Second.
I'm going to call on each person to vote. Mr. Mullen?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Pombley?
Yes.
Ms. Plotkin?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue? Yes. So I think we're going to adjourn from here to go have our executive session. Meeting from our executive session. Again, this is the Westwood School Committee November 9th meeting. We did our Pledge of Allegiance earlier. I want to recognize the Westwood Media Center for live streaming the meeting and also the recording for later viewing by residents, particularly Connor Lynch, Melinda Garfield, for all the work they put into allowing us to televise these events. We are now going to open up with our superintendent's report.
Great, thank you.
Emily?
Thanks. So I want to tell you about a couple of exciting things that are happening this year that are in support of one of our strategic priorities of creating a healthy and supported school community. So we have joined the Massachusetts Partnership for Youth. It is sort of a consortium of about 250 public schools, public charter schools, private schools, education collaboratives, and nonprofits. And they provide professional development opportunities related to providing resources, programming, and structures that support health and well-being of students. So we're excited to be able to provide some of these PD opportunities to our staff. Just as one example, we are already participating in a year-long program that's called School Mental Health Leadership Institute, Understanding and Addressing System-Level Needs. All of our guidance counselors at the middle school and our adjustment counselor and assistant principal and dean of students are participating as a team from Westwood in this year-long program. So we think this is going to be a good opportunity and resource for us as a district. We also are participating this year, tomorrow actually, in the Metrowest Adolescent Health Survey. This is a survey that has been around since 2006. It's administered biannually to 25 Metrowest communities. It's very similar to the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which some of you may be familiar with, may have even taken yourself when you were in high school. But it's sort of expanded and customized to focus on some of the specific questions that we have in Metrowest Boston. It's a nice opportunity for us because we will get back from this a report that will give us timely, comparative, and ultimately longitudinal data. It's about our kids' attitudes and behavior related to some important issues. And we think that that data will help inform us about our educational programming and how best to support our students. So the survey that we're administering this year is actually an abbreviated version. The topics are what's up here on the screen. So it's covering alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use, mental health, online behaviors, sleep, and protective factors. So like, do you have somebody at home who supports you? Do you have an adult that you trust in the school community? The survey is anonymous and voluntary. Parents have the opportunity to opt their students out. Students also in the moment can decide that they don't want to take the survey or they're going to skip questions. It's being administered in grades 6 to 12. And it's supported, it typically would cost quite a bit of money to do this, but it's supported by grant funding from the state's Substance Misuse and Prevention Grant. And so we are actually part of our public health departments in Westwood, Needham, Norwood, and Dedham are part of a little regional cluster. And so the grant was obtained by that regional cluster. And Dedham, Norwood, and Needham have actually participated in the past. Westwood had the opportunity with this grant funding to join this year. And so we're excited to be a part of that. I think it will give us some important information. And
Any questions for Emily?
no, okay. And this, I think, is Abby. He's going to say a few words.
So,
I think you need a
this year for the
microphone. We don't have.
First time we participated in a new DESE audit, which is broadly termed the Educational Stability Audit. And over the years, you guys have heard me talk about McKinney-Vento, which is a law that supports, continuity of instruction for students who are homeless or whose housing is very unstable. And so the Department of Education has now grouped a variety of students for whom instability in their educational access is a common thread together, and is now auditing towns on that like a trifecta of kind of student groups. So McKinney-Vento, which you're familiar with, we produced data for the state on that. Students who are in foster care relationships, so often students will be placed outside of their perhaps biological family in a kinship placement or in a foster placement, and those students often experience interruption in their schooling, and that has downstream impacts for academic and social emotional functioning. And so those students are now their data is going to be followed longitudinally by DESE, and we started that process with this first audit. And then finally, military families. So I think you recall in 2019, we updated our policies on the support of students whose parents are in the military, because they also experience moves and academic change that can impact access to advanced coursework in high school and things like that. We did a lot of policy development. And so these three subgroups of students are now comprising this educational stability audit group, and we will every 3 years be producing data that will be publicly available about our policies, training, and procedures. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, anybody?
No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Speaking of audits, so you may recall that last spring we participated in what's called a targeted district review from DESE, and I want to clarify that the targeted part doesn't mean we're like, let's check out Westwood. It's targeted because there's a comprehensive review, and we got the more abbreviated version. And so I put up here on the screen how DESE describes the purpose of the review. It's designed to identify the systems, policies, and practices that drive the day-to-day work of the school district, as well as those factors that may help or hinder staff performance and ultimately student outcomes. Analysis of these systems, policies, and practices includes a focus on the ways in which the district works to improve and promote equity for underserved groups of students. So this is the Office of District Reviews and Monitoring. It's part of the accountability system with DESE. We had a visiting team in May 2022, and they looked at a lot of things. So they looked at all kinds of performance data, achievement and growth data, enrollment, graduation, dropout, retention, suspension, attendance rates. We provided them with many, many district documents, like school improvement plans, the school committee policy book, curriculum documents, summaries of student assessments, job descriptions, evaluation tools, schedules. They also looked at a selection of completed evaluations, and their team conducted 64 classroom observations. So they just went out into the district, and wherever they decided to walk in, they did. And so we just received a report of their findings a couple weeks ago in October. And I have to say, overall, they were very complimentary of the district and noted many strengths. I will say I was very pleased when I read this, and so much so that it prompted me to go look at some of the other reviews that have been done of other districts, and I felt equally pleased after I did that. So that was very nice. And they did have some suggestions for improvement, and what we noticed is that there were no surprises. So they were suggestions for improvement that we had already identified and included in our articulated priorities. So that was very affirming. And sometimes you come out of these accountability processes with corrective action or something that you have to do further, but there is nothing that we are required to do.
Can I ask a question? This may
Sure.
become up in MCAS. The instructional support at 6th through 8 was a little lower than I think the rest of the districts. It'd be helpful as you take MCAS just to hear how you're thinking about that in that context. So maybe you get to it in that step.
So instructional support?
I think there was a category if you look at
Yeah.
instructional support. If you look at the ratings, they have a ratings grid, and you
Yes,
look at
that
6th through 8 wasn't as high as at least the rest of the
Yes,
district.
we noted.
Okay, so you noted. So I
Yes,
think
we
it'd be helpful
did.
to understand how that kind of line PD and kind of
Yep.
some of the stuff at MCAS. So.
Yep.
Can we get copies of this report?
Sure,
School
it is
committee?
publicly available. I linked it on the agenda. It's on DESE's website, and I would be happy to provide you a hard
Also,
copy.
could you tell us some of the highlights of what they liked about us?
Well, so something that
It's like a
was,
70-page report.
it's a really long report.
Summarize it.
But one of the things that was notable to me was they were very complimentary about our use of data in terms of informing instruction, and I think that the teachers that they interviewed did a really great job articulating the work that we're doing. For instance, the rollout of the STAR assessment, implementation of the WIN block, how we're thinking about intervention, right? And so that was really exciting because I feel like it's something that we've focused on and have been working on. So it was nice to see that come through. Strengthened curriculum, articulated curriculum.
Did they notice anything with regard to our SIPS program or J-term?
They did not specifically call that out, no.
Did they even know about them? I mean,
I don't know.
I don't think
I saw
any-
they
J-term
did. We did
mentioned.
say that.
I
We
saw
did
it
mention it, yeah.
Because I don't think other high schools are doing that, and I would
They
assume
might
that
have.
they
So
might.
I think maybe they did in the
They did
narrative say
mention it.
something
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank
It's a
God
good
if we
read.
could
I'll give
get
that to you.
caught. Any other questions? Thank
I
you.
just want to thank you guys for doing that. It came at a really burdensome time. And there was a lot of work. And
Yeah.
so I just want to thank the district and your team for doing all of that work.
And thank you, and I really want to thank, there were many educators, parents, students who participated in the process at an incredibly busy time of year, and so a big thank you to all of those people. I think that they did a remarkable job articulating what's happening in the district. It was really great.
And how often is it done? Is it done periodically?
It's periodically, I don't really know, because they keep changing the name of the review and the name of the office that does it, so I've lost track. But I don't think it's as consistent as the, I mean.
No.
They did it for all levels of elementary. Is there a way we could summarize it like in 3 or 4 pages and share it with the
There's an
parents?
executive
There's an
summary
executive summary
in
in the
there.
report.
Is that, how many pages is that?
It's about a page and a half.
Yeah, so we could send that out to the families?
I don't know if I mean, I can post it on the
Yeah,
website.
I think
Yeah.
the people might
I'll post
enjoy
it.
seeing what someone else thought.
Okay. It's a little technical, I will say, but it's nice. And then I did just want to put a picture up here. This was the first joint Hanlon-Deerfield faculty meeting that we've ever had. So that was just an exciting milestone in this process. So there they all are, and there's Josh Baumer, their fearless leader. So and I'm assuming Matt, an equally fearless leader, is somewhere there as well. So took the picture. There you go. You're the photographer. Yeah. So we really are working this year to start bringing the faculties together and be ready for next year. And then just lastly, we had some interesting things happening in 8th grade science, and so I thought I would put a picture up here, and this is Mr. Kohut's room. So something is happening there, and then I'm assuming that this was intended, right? That this was the desired impact. But you can see that the people in the crowd are enjoying this science experiment, so some good things happening. Okay, and then we also have some people with us from SEPAC. I don't know if Abby, if you want to introduce, and while I get the slides. Go.
So feel free to come on up, and I will just very quickly say, we have had a lovely, long-standing, positive relationship with SEPAC, and one of the best parts is having SEPAC come in and directly present to school committee. So we welcome Mr. Jones, and we want to take an opportunity to just give you guys a chance to ask questions and give SEPAC the floor. So, thank you.
So normally both of us would come. My Stephanie Feingold is the other co-chair, but she has COVID. So we were scheduling to go through the slides together, and then she sent me a picture of her positive test. So she said, like, I don't think we should get together. And I said, okay. I have 4 children in Westwood schools. We have a high school sophomore, I'm getting ahead of myself. And then we have 3 children at the Downey School, a 5th grader, a 4th grader, and a 1st grader. 2 of my children at the Downey School are on the autism spectrum, and that's what got us involved with SEPAC. So SEPAC is the Special Education Parental Advisory Committee. It is a state-mandated organization that every district in Massachusetts is required to have. And it is a network of caregivers, parents, grandparents, anybody that cares for special education kids, that brings them together to help create a place of inclusiveness and works with school districts to create and advise school districts on how to best care for the needs of special education kids. This is one little story that we got. We asked for people to send in some stories of how SEPAC impacted them, and you can read it. I won't read it to you, but basically it really helps people connect with other people in the district. It helps them know, especially at the beginning of the process. Many people come into SEPAC at the integrated preschool, or maybe a little later if they move into the district, but it helps them find people. and learn about the process. This is my son, Caleb. We learned about SEPAC when he was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3 through the integrated preschool, when we started a long process of learning what was going on with him. We were evaluated, we had further evaluations, we were referred to somebody else, and eventually we found out that he had a diagnosis and had great help, and continued through the process and are getting great help with various services at Downey in the peer program. But what was great about SEPAC is we had no idea what an IEP was. We didn't know what it worked. We didn't know what a placement was. We didn't know that going to the integrated preschool would be free because we had already put a deposit down at another preschool in town. And we're like, well, we've already paid for this. We can't, what are we going to do? So we didn't know how it was going to work. So parents in town, in SEPAC, helped us understand the entire process. And it's been invaluable for us moving forward. So what do we do? So we gather input first. We have parents, caregivers, educators, other people in the community. We gather feedback. We gather information of how special education is working in the town. We share that with you. We share that with Abby. We share that with the district. And then we use that to help drive and foster that understanding, acceptance, and inclusion for everyone in the district. And we do that in a couple of ways. We have a structure. We have an executive board. We have 2 co-chairs. We normally have 2 treasurers. We just have 1 right now. And then we have 2 secretaries. We like to have 2 people in each position for planning down the road. So one person is kind of the lead. The next person kind of becomes that person the next year. We have liaisons at each school, and then subcommittees to take over specific things, to work on specific topics. New this year is Stephanie Feingold is actually a member now of the Commission on Disabilities, so we have an ongoing person who's now a liaison on that commission. So we figured that's a good relationship to build going forward to have. And so we have, again, a liaison at every school in the district. And in some elementary schools particularly, one of our liaisons is on the board, actually, of the PTO of those schools as an ongoing relationship. So that's helpful to help them understand and communicate the needs. And that's very helpful because in some instances, for example, a SEPAC liaison has helped those PTOs create more inclusive and helpful like sensory-friendly events. So for example, many Halloween parties have been nightmares for many kids. But now, particularly at my school, they have a sensory-friendly time where families can bring their kids, and then it's a more traditional, scary, spooky event later. And so it's helpful for all types of families. So how do we do what we do? We have a very simple kind of 3-step or 3-prong umbrella, and we just use advocacy, education, and support to help support the caregivers and the educators and the district in doing what we do. So first, in advocacy, we do school committee presentations like this. We do meetings with other school district staff, either at schools specifically. We meet with special education administrators one-on-one. As new district team members come in, we will meet with them. For example, the new dean of students at the middle school, we met with him to help him know what SEPAC was. The new Metco administrators that started, Letitia Frank and Candace, we met with them over the summer, so they offered our assistance with whatever they would need, so they would know how SEPAC works in our district, and just so we could know how we can help them as well. And then we also have ongoing community meetings to gather this feedback that we provide, and so we can advocate for the district and for parents. For education, we have, again, our community meetings. MassPAC is an organization that gathers SEPACs from across the state and allows them to facilitate different events. They also provide different presentations, and we assist the district in scheduling presentations. We have a membership in that organization, and as part of that membership, they provide presentations. They're called basic rights presentations, there are a set of 3. One is understanding the IEP. One is on transition planning, so once children turn 14, that's typically when the transition starts of how they will transition out of high school, whether they graduate or get a certificate of completion or whatever steps come next for them. And then there's one more basic rights presentation that I'm not remembering right now, but there's usually a set of 3 that we rotate through each year. The logo that's up there is PLAN. That's a specific organization that helps with planning for the future. So for example, many people, kids who use special education services eventually will need a special needs trust to plan for the future. If a child has lots of assets in their name, they may lose access to state benefits. So a special needs trust allows them to have resources in their name, but not in their name, so that they can have plans, assets for the future. And so we have them come and speak to us, so parents could be aware this is a plan, is an organization that will help administer a trust for a family, for example, if they need help setting it up and administering it. We have other guest speakers and resource fairs. We're working with the Dedham SEPAC, for example, to work together to create a resource fair with them. We're still working to schedule it and get people like occupational therapists, speech therapists, sensory-friendly gyms, other things to get for parents to go and learn about all the different resources in our areas. And so we're working with them to find ways to educate parents and other people about all the different resources in our area. Another great thing that we do is we offer support to families. So this is just some of our CPAC members. We do networking coffees on a regular basis. These are morning ones that we did at Legacy Place and in Norwood. We are adding other ones. We're going to have an evening one at Conrad soon, and then we're all looking at adding some in the weekends on the new year. We've been asked for that. It's just as we have availability for different members to kind of staff those. We're going to try to add those because people have asked, well, can we do it on weekends? And other times it's just finding someone who'd be willing to have at least one person there to wait down a table so people have someone to come. Is this the CPAC event? Yes, it is. So they have someone there to talk to. Another thing that's new that we started during the pandemic that is continuing is online parent groups. We started calling them support groups, but we didn't want them to people to think they're therapy because they're not therapy. But they are parent groups. We have one for parents of children with emotional or mental health challenges, neurodiverse profiles, language-based learning, so things like dyslexia, and then those with medically complex diagnoses, deafness, sight challenges, things like that. And so these usually happen once a month. They are all online. We've kept them online. It really allows lots of people to attend. We have volunteers that usually aren't on our board, but they facilitate those independently. We post the dates and links on our website, and it's a great opportunity for parents to meet together and have a common opportunity so they can discuss challenges that are unique. My 11-year-old was recently diagnosed with autism, and so it's a fairly new thing for us, and we went to one of these things and we didn't know how he would take the diagnosis because our 7-year-old presents very differently than he does. Because if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, as the saying goes. And so we thought he would be upset because he would think, well, I'm nothing like Caleb. But in one of these groups, a friend recommended a book, and we used that book to read chapters with our son, and he learned a lot about it. He learned that there were authors that he liked the books that this author wrote, and so we learned a lot about a lot of people who were like he was, and it was a great discussion, and so far he's been fine with everything. So it was a great opportunity for us to explore his diagnosis with him in a way that we wouldn't have known about had we not attended one of these groups. Other highlights of things that we've done this year, we had a booth at Westwood Day, which was a great experience. You can see Asanka Mooring and Stephanie Feingold. Asanka is one of our secretaries. They built our mailing list there, met a lot of people. We also had our first in-person meeting at the library, but we also had hybrid access, so we had about as many people in person as we did online, and we had lots of new faces there, which we hadn't seen before, which was great. We didn't know who would come out. excuse me, we restructured some of our support groups. We had more of them, but we realized many of them had some things in common. So we had like an autism group and a neurodiverse profiles group. We kind of collapsed those because they were more in common than we thought. And then, like I said, we have now an ongoing connection with the Commission on Disability, which we are excited to do that and have that. They were interested in joining our Facebook group, but it wasn't really a great place for them to have the information that they needed. So we decided having a liaison relationship with them was better. And so these are some of the concerns that we have from our members when we have this opportunity to talk to you. The first two, bullying and the same and different curriculum, really go hand in hand. We know that the same and different curriculum is under review and is being evaluated. When we look at that curriculum and how it approaches teaching kids kind of a different set of disabilities each year over time, it kind of doesn't teach enough sooner and doesn't expose kids to as many things as they need to. I think kids can learn a lot and absorb a lot. The way it is now, many kids may not learn about what autism is until maybe 5th grade, and they've probably been beside someone who has autism since preschool. And not that they need to know what autism is, but to know what neurodiversity is and that people think differently than you and that it's just different is a great skill to know. And to know why someone might be melting down in the corner of your classroom is a great tool to have as a kid. And that goes along with bullying. Our kids are prone to that because they are different, and not only are they different, is they always don't understand that they are being bullied. And sometimes our kids don't understand that they are bullying kids because they don't understand the words that they say, and they don't understand that the words that they say hurt people. And so it's very important to focus on the social emotional learning for them on both sides of the coin. I think sometimes we focus, oh, these kids are being bullied, but sometimes their words hurt more than anything else as well. We had some great feedback from parents this year about curriculum nights. I think they're very focused on general education, which is appropriate. And we went to them for our kids. We spoke to our principal, Mrs. Gallagher, afterwards, and we had a great conversation with her. We went to our first graders curriculum night, and he spends a lot of time in the peer classroom. And as we sat in his first graders general ed classroom, and she's a wonderful teacher, I just knew that this was not his day. And I knew that on his best day, he was not going to be doing what all these other kids were doing in the general ed classroom. And I know his special education teacher was very busy. She had lots of things going on, and I knew she would be receptive to scheduling a meeting and me saying, could you walk me through my son's day? I want to know what he does in the first grade every day. I wanted to be respectful of her time. I didn't know if there was a better way, because if I felt this way, maybe there are other parents in the peer program who felt this way. Is there a better way to have parents have a special education curriculum night? And then when we talked about this in one of our SEPAC general meetings and other meetings, I learned that other schools were addressing it differently. And so I don't know if there's a way for everyone in Westwood in a special education to have kind of a similar curriculum night experience. We learned that some parents expressed a concern at the middle school, and they rallied and they had a great experience from a learning center perspective. They reached out and they had an opportunity to go and meet with the Learning Center people during a certain block of the middle school curriculum night, and they all had a wonderful experience. And another, I think it was at Sheehan, they had an opportunity where one of the language-based learning teachers, they had a time for them to come into the room, and they had a name, place, and they each had a great experience going in there. So I think it was addressed differently by different people, but I don't know if there's a way for everyone to address, is there a way to make curriculum night more accessible for people who want that type of experience? The final thing is retaining staff. I don't think that this is a problem from my experience, but from anybody who deals with outside services, we fortunately have good insurance, and so we have outside speech therapy. We had outside occupational therapy, but as you know, if this day and age, if anybody sees any whispering of a better job, they go and take it, especially with therapists. And so education is very difficult from a profession, and we value it. I think special education teachers is sometimes even more difficult than just a general education teacher. I'm a stay-at-home parent for our family most of the time, but there are times when I substitute in Westwood Public Schools, and so I have subbed as a classroom teacher, and I've also subbed as an instructional assistant, working with kids on IEPs. I've, had been called names, had been shouted at, had things thrown at me, been kicked, and that was on one day in the course of about an hour. But I came back on the next day, and it was fine. And I know I say that not to say what was me, but to realize that I know that there are people who have been through far worse over far longer periods of time. And as you plan budgets and look at our staff, Westwood is a district of choice. I just want to make sure, how can we make sure that our special educators in particular have what they need so that they choose to stay in Westwood, given that people now more and more are going wherever they want because there are more and more options for them. I don't know if this happens as much with teachers, but I know for sure it is with therapists. One day this year, I was in our son's occupational therapist practice, and while I was in the waiting room, I saw 2 different therapists resign, saying that they were going to different jobs in the same 15 minutes. So it's been on my mind, and they still haven't been able to replace him. So he is getting services at school, thankfully, and so we're grateful for that. But that is something that, as we plan for the future, and I'm sure you are thinking of it, but as we've had discussions, it's been on our minds as we plan for the future. So upcoming events, these are just some things that we wanted to put in our slides. We have great we have board meetings, other meet and greets, and the Basic Rights Workshop is probably the first one. It's one of our most well-attended ones because it's a great entry, understanding the IEP. And then we'll start the cycle over and we repeat it. Sometimes we do another one in the spring, depending on what we can schedule with the MASPAC. Just a few more quotes. We've had these in our presentation before, but people really do value SEPAC. I think when we talk to other SEPACs in our area, we have one of the best run SEPACs in the area, and that's not because of me and Stephanie, but because of other people who've started doing this over the past several years, have really helped get it going, and the great parents who have kept it going. We encourage everyone, if there's people watching, to get involved. We have 2 Facebook groups, actually. We have a Westwood SEPAC Facebook group, which is for people who are already in the district and have an IEP or 504. We also have a Friends of Westwood SEPAC group. We get a lot of people who are interested in moving to Westwood but aren't in our district yet. And so we have a separate Facebook group for them who, if they have questions about our district. So it helps us as a district, as a board, understand, kind of keep things separate and understand who's who. We have our website. We encourage people to volunteer, and we have all of our events, encourage people to come to our events. So with that, I don't know if there are any questions for us. We have a few other board members here, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I just want to say thank you. I think you all do such a wonderful job and have been so helpful to my family and so many other families in the community. And I'm in agreement with you and on board with the idea of starting the same but different type curriculum earlier. And if there's anything that myself as a committee member can do, I'm happy to try to help with that.
Thank you for your presentation. I hope we can use it over and over to give. My first assignment on the school committee was to be on the CPAC. So, the thing that struck me was the parents of the young kids are kind of there like deers in the headlights, just what am I doing? And the older parents took them under their wing and educated them. Oh, my kid so you had high school, middle school, in CPAC, educating these new parents. Then I remember one woman got up and she said, I've had a kid with a lot of problems. We've been in the city of Boston, get wonderful, wonderful care. We finally told them we're leaving. And they said, please, I'm going to Westwood. She said, well, couldn't go to a better place. You know, it's a great program. So, you know, thank you for what you do and the parents at. Abby, the staff you have is unbelievable, you know, working with all these groups. I'm sure you're keeping them on as well as you can, but I think it's a wonderful thing. What is it, 17% of our students, 70, maybe 18 to 9% of our school kids are special ed needs, which, you know, this is just a wonderful way to, you know, get your ideas into the system, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you,
Jerry.
Jerry.
You all set with your report?
Yep.
Can I just ask one thing?
Please.
Just for maybe a future superintendent's report, and I defer to you on what's the right month. But I'd love to hear how the METCO expansion program has been going. Now that we're a few months into it, maybe it's too early, I don't know, but at some point.
No, great. I'll have to update you.
Thank you. This next part of our program is the public comments. We allow for anyone in the community to come and offer us 3 minutes of public comment. We don't respond to them, but we just listen to you. So is there anybody here tonight that would like to make a public comment? Thank you. Just identify yourself, where you live. Thank you for joining us.
Sure.
Hi, everybody. Mandy Taft-Pierman, 723 Gay Street. Good to see you all. Just wanted to share comments on a couple things related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. One was, I know the equity audit's underway and I think getting close to completion, and just wanted to voice from sort of parent community real desire to see the findings and the recommendations, and so hope there will be an opportunity to kind of learn and hear about that. Have been really glad the district's leaning into that and excited to see what the recommendations are. Second is a hope, and it was alluded to a little bit, I think maybe part of the same health and wellness review, is a hope that the 5th grade puberty education can be revised this year in advance of the spring delivery. It's a curriculum that's, I think, widely agreed to be very outdated, and I know there's been conversation, at least since my older kid was in 5th grade, which was 3 years ago, about the need to revise it. And so I really hope that we can, I know there's an overall review underway, but I hope we could take action on that before this spring. There's elements of it, to my best understanding, that could actually be harmful for kids who don't identify as cisgender, and just things that are really beyond what we now know is a healthy way to teach kids about what's going on with their bodies in 5th grade. So I hope we can move on that this year. And then the last thing is, I know at least a number of the schools are doing activities for Inclusive Schools Week, which is the first week of December. It actually has its history linked to SEPAC in the special education community. It's broadened to also look at broader issues of inclusion, and just hopeful that the district will be supportive of those efforts happening in different schools across the district. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to offer public comment? Well, thank you. We will be announcing, we do have office hours as another form of giving us feedback. We'll announce the future date sometime soon, but thank you for coming. Next section is the chair's update. The acting chair, we rotate every year. So, first off, Tony and I are working with the Charter Commission. Westwood has its Charter Commission updating the charter. So we've been trying to offer them feedback on how we get along with all the town departments. Any problems with all, they've been very helpful to us with us. Building project and other things. We've met with many department people. Mayor is going to be working with the Long Range Financial Planning Committee, has provided a lot of expertise to us on trying to do the building of the school and everything else, so we have a great person in her. We're also just keeping an eye on resiliency. All the emergency rooms in Massachusetts are full, 8 hours once you get in to see somebody. The pediatric hospitals are full, and we've been warned that keep your horses saddled because we may have some problem coming up in the future. But I think, you know, personally, I would advise people that take advantage of the new shots that they have, dealing with new variants, as well as just a flu shot. I like to have the kids in school, not miss school 3 days because they just have the flu. Also, I want to thank Amy and Emily for figuring out a way. We did have a program here we started a few years ago called the Dale Carnegie course. It's the only high school in the country that offers this. Seniors this year have missed it for the last 2 years. So they've figured out a way to allow the seniors to come back to J-term, because usually they've left school a couple of weeks before, to take advantage of the Dale Carnegie course. But I thought I'd like to just share with you a brief description of former Westwood students, what they felt was valuable in Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie, by the way, is well known in the business community. If you're hiring a kid out of college today, you put them through a Dale Carnegie course to get them ready to deal with business. This is a former Westwood student. Dale Carnegie training is a course that provides evidence-based teaching for being successful in all aspects of life. It is a course that has stood the test of time, enabling ambitious people to improve areas in their lives and overcome their fears and take their life to a level they dreamed of. Developing confidence, improving public speaking, building and developing relationships, communicating, dealing with difficult co-workers or people. Remembering people's names is just a small subject of what courses teach, recognized nationally as one of the best self-improvement courses in the last century. As a Westwood graduate myself, I can't put into words how important the Dale Carnegie was to my life. It allowed me to better understand my capabilities, believe in myself, and learn to admire and appreciate my colleagues as we work together on accomplishing similar goals. It's training that has been etched in my DNA and will be there for the rest of my life. I would strongly recommend it to anyone looking to improve themselves. So we'll be doing this during J-term. The seniors can sign up, but everybody else, but it's, I just want to thank Emily and John Antonucci, who really brought this program to Westwood, and the feedback we've received has been great, but we're going to continue it on now after COVID to keep the program going. I would like to now move on to our next subject, which is the school building project update.
Thanks, Charlie. Yep, the school building project is moving along. I believe the foundation, about 50% of the foundation has been poured. So we are, getting cement in the ground. We're gonna start seeing steel going up soon. One thing we are discussing is when the last beam goes in, I think we're gonna put the Westwood Public School logo on the beam, so that'll be very
I
exciting.
talked to Rob today. He said it's a very large beam and that all the kids can sign it.
Oh.
So I think that'll be really exciting.
So the kids will be signing it. It'll be cold, right? I think it'll be around February. So they gotta bundle up, but yes, that
I hope
would
I
be-
get to sign the beam too, I
Yes.
have to say.
I think
You
we
know?
might,
Yeah.
we might be able
Okay.
to sign the beam. So that's exciting. So, yeah, I mean, it's coming along, I don't really know what else to say. It's going up.
Thank you.
Right?
Great.
Any questions at all?
It was interesting, a parent pointed out to me that this year's 5th grade class will be the last 5th grade class at the Hamlin School, and it's kind
Yes.
of wild to think of it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
So it's exciting,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. We'll have to think about that. I remember
Yeah.
when we moved high schools, it was a similar timeline.
Yeah.
And that we had to think carefully about the seniors coming to a new place for the end of their career, so we need to think about that.
Yep.
The Policy Review Subcommittee.
Oh, right, so we started back up with with the Policy Review Subcommittee.
We haven't got to the 1,000 pages yet.
Yeah.
500.
We're close. So there's not much to note, although to point out there are 2 policies that we're kind of holding. So that's related to buses, and the policy we have is old and needs a lot of work. So we thought that it was better to bring in all of the right people and have a broader conversation. So more to come on that. We'll pull the school committee into those conversations. And similarly, we put a hold on the policy regarding the use of private vehicles for transporting students. There was a lot of kind of questions and back and forth about that, so it needs some work. So we're gonna circle back to those. But otherwise, we're forging ahead.
Thank you. One of the issues that came up too, with looking for input, I said I'd take a cut at writing it, is the idling of vehicles on school grounds. If I've ever noticed, when it's mostly for picking up. Parents come in and they just park the car, and there's a lot of literature now out on the danger idling, the exhaust from an idling car produces damage to the lungs of kids who are much more vulnerable. With the pollution, and one of the articles said that 10 minutes of idling is equivalent to 3 packs of cigarettes. I mean, so we'd like to define under the guidelines here that what idling is about, how dangerous it is. And what schools are now doing is putting up signs as cars come in, and it says, idling, please, after 1 minute, shut your car off for the safety of our children, for the respiratory, things like that, which is not in our policy. And I think of all the schools where people are picking kids up, we don't have signs like that. You know, they just do it. So that's one other thing we want to add to that section to deal with all of the schools and the damage that could be done by not acting on it.
And to be clear about that, the policy, I don't know the verbiage, but it does kind of forbid idling on school grounds, but correct me if I'm wrong, it would require, like, if people are idling in the street or whatever, for a police officer to come out and
Well,
enforce.
even on school grounds. So the prohibition of idling on school grounds is a law. So our policy is just in keeping with that. And I think what Charlie suggested is sometimes in our policies we sort of start with like one sentence that explains the purpose of the policy, and we don't have that in there. It's just telling you what the rule is. So we could see if we could do that.
Other liaison reports.
We have a couple things. So maybe I'll just give an office hours update. So we didn't talk about it. So just, I won't go in depth, but we had good office hours. There was probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 people in a 3,000-degree room in the high school. But that
sounds about right.
So can Amy. But it was a good group. I think there were 4 topics, just briefly. We had a good conversation about athletics, and there was some good feedback about how do we make sure we're having a good feedback loop and getting the kids involved. So that was really helpful. We had some conversation about DE&I and just where we were on the equity audit. Third conversation, the never-ending struggle we have to get communication out. I think people always want more, but it's hard. That people, how do we best communicate? So any feedback people have in the community, how to better communicate, we're trying. It's just hard. There was a little bit on start times, which we'll be talking about later. And the 5th topic was a little bit around requirements for high school teachers, and not just high school teachers, what are the requirements and certifications for teachers. So it was good. I think it was a great, I'd encourage. I think the next one will be just for people in the community. We basically we do one in the day, and then we do one at night. So the next one, this one was during the day. The next one will be in the evening. You know, just to accommodate schedule. So I encourage people to come. But it was a good conversation. And then just briefly put a plug in. I think all the PTOs are supporting Lisa Lyons on November 29th. You've probably seen it. She's really world-renowned on kind of anxiety and mental health. It's going to be right here in the high school on, I think that's a Tuesday. Lynn. But anyway, encourage it. And I think there, you know, if you have maybe a teen, it's not young kids, but if you have a teen like 13 and above as well, they're welcome to attend as well. So just for a plug, I think all the PTOs are supporting that. And then finally, just thank you to the high school PTO and Amy for the 22nd of November. There's a lot of buzz about this homecoming dance after the last 3 years. So lots of buzz, and I think lots of excitement.
Lots of dress shopping.
Lots of dress shopping. So I think everyone's very excited about. Well, the kids I know are very excited. I don't remember this buzz ever existing before.
Yeah,
yet,
no,
so.
I think that's true.
So anyway, that's it.
Sorry. I just wanted to do a plug for another event next week. On Wednesday is the community-wide safe gun storage event. It's at Wentworth Hall at 7 o'clock. So it's obviously the school district, Westwood Youth and Family Services, and Westwood Police Department are coming together. And there's a representative from every town for gun safety who's coming out to facilitate the conversation. So please join us.
I also want to thank quite a few of our schools for getting money for projects that they submitted to the Westwood Council for Educational. Anyway, they're getting grants, and thank the PTOs who submitted proposals and all of that. And for an inclusion event this Saturday night at Westwood's where the kids get their lunch is a Diwali celebration. It's the Indian holiday, and women who aren't dressed in saris, as you come in, they dress you up in a sari. So it's a kind of Westwood's been a host for this for quite a few years. The last 2 they didn't, but it's people come from all over the East Coast to attend this unique ceremony here in Westwood. So it's our Indian Westwood Indian Association sponsors that. Okay.
Charlie, if you don't mind, I just wanted to give a quick extended day program update. So we have been meeting, and I think we've all seen that there have been some comments and concerns about, you know, school start times as it relates to extended day and so forth. So in that vein, you know, we've been meeting and talking, and we'll continue to meet. I think next week we have something set up. So, yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, if all set on the updates, thank you for all the extracurricular activities we do from the school committee. Next is discussion items. Number first is 2022 MCAS curriculum analysis. Allison, thanks so much for getting into this.
Thank you.
It's appreciated.
Does she need the microphone again?
Yes.
I see Allison's famous charts.
Oh, yeah, you gotta
Yeah.
see it. We're gonna do a reprise of last time, because I like these so much. Get ready. All right. Oh, I get it. My very own microphone. As you recall, last time we did the kind of high-level overview looking at context. I'm going to breeze through that quickly just to sort of reset the stage, and just because it's really nice news, so I sort of want to double down on that. As you remember, the statewide context for MCAS, we saw some trends that were pointed out by the Department of Education, and that these trends, which have been out there in the state, are reflected in some part in Westwood, but the nice news for us is that things just didn't hit as hard here, and we also really feel like we are seeing signs that we are well poised to recover very quickly from the pandemic in a way that other places just have not, or are not yet. So nice news for us. And that is evident in kind of how we did when you look at comp data. So this is all information from last time, so I'm going to sort of storm through it quickly. We had some really nice results when you compare our aggregate results to the state, as well as some highlights in particular grade levels in math, great overall performance in grade 4 and 5, and strength in ELA grade 6 and 8th grade science. And then these are the charts, just so we can, we're going to march through them really quickly here. So grade 3 English, this is compared to our comp districts. Grade 3 math. And again, this is the total percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations. So grade 4 English, grade 4 math. Then my favorite set, grade 5 English. Yes. Grade 5 math, and this one I particularly like, grade 5 science. I think it's worth noting, I didn't mention this as much last time, but the math scores, not only were those strong comparable scores in grades 3, 4, and 5, grade 3, our scores did not deflate at all between 2021, 2022, and our grade 4 and 5 scores actually got better at a time when much of the state was getting worse. So when I say I think we're really well poised to kind of move ahead, that's the sort of thing I mean. So, and let's see, that's the highlight reel for elementary. Okay, moving on here. Okay, grade 6. We also saw some really nice things in the middle school, and this was one of those places. This is the group that was the 11th in the state. Grade 6 math, I want to say, again, this is an area where the actual achievement went up substantially between 21 and 22. When you look at this number, the percentage went up by 20% in terms of the total of students either meeting or exceeding expectations between that year, which means we've got folks working really hard to get us back on track. Grade 7 English. Grade 7 math, also looking great in the comps. Grade 8 English, interestingly, English was a place where it was kind of down and a little bit deflated statewide. An exception to that was our 8th grade English. Actual achievement went up slightly between 21 and 22. And grade 8 math was another place where we went up sharply in terms of actual achievement. That was another up by 20%. And 8th grade science up by 11%. So substantial improvements. Okay, I'm gonna get to the new stuff here soon. High school was fairly stable, actually, English year to year. And when you look at overall what happened to scores with our comps, you see the whole thing kind of flattens out, but Westwood sort of moves up slightly when compared to similar districts. Same story in math. We're kind of where we expected to be. And the math scores did something somewhat the same. They sort of flattened out and we moved up a little bit. Okay, let's get to
This is actually kind of what I want to focus on tonight. So we've started the more in-depth analysis, and the things I'm going to talk about today are in the area of curriculum instruction implications. And really we wanted to look at 3 questions, sort of where were areas of strength, where were expected areas of lower performance, and where were unexpected areas of lower performance, and then what are we going to do about it? What are our strategies for improvement? And I'll explain a little bit more about that. When we do this, we really look at how kids perform in categories based on the learning standards. So the test gives us a lot of good information sort of on a question level basis, so we can really understand how many students scored points on certain questions, which tells us a little bit about the impact of our curriculum, what we teach, and our instruction, which is the how we teach it. And most of this work, where we're really drilling down, happens at the department level. So our curriculum leaders throughout the district, sort of with teams of people, are doing this, sort of filtering it back to me. So I get their kind of summary results. Okay. Elementary math overall had really nice news, just across the board. Some clear strengths were in areas that we believe are very important. So numbers and operations in base 10 and fractions, those are things that set kids up for strong performance down the road. Some surprises, places where we actually didn't expect to do as well as we did, were in geometry and measurement and data. And that's simply because those are areas where we scaled back our emphasis during the hybrid year in 2021. We knew we couldn't jam, 10 gallons of stuff in a 5-gallon bucket, and we had to make some choices about what are we going to emphasize in curriculum and instruction. Those are the things we kind of let fall off the radar more. So to see them bounce back more quickly than we thought was great. I want to give some credit maybe to our science folks for picking up some of the ball with measurement and data, because that's a part of what works so well in elementary. Kids are using those same skills in different places. Another nice thing in the math department is we really did see consistency in terms of performance across our schools. We have very small elementary schools, and we really don't get into a lot of comparative school-to-school data, in part because those scores can be very volatile school-to-school. The populations are so small that a couple kids who struggle with test taking can make a big difference in test scores. But it is nice when we see across curriculum strands things that are similar and similar trends happening over time, and we really are seeing that in math. So good news for us there. Okay. Some math grade level based recommendations, and I'll explain a little bit about these. You'll notice that some of them have to do with format of the test. That's the constructed response type questions are an area where our 3rd graders and our 5th graders struggled a little bit more. We think they maybe are struggling for different reasons. So in grade 3, constructed response are the written kind of math questions. You have to actually sort of solve step by step and explain your answer. And we think our 3rd graders just didn't have enough practice. So we think our 5th graders had more practice, but maybe a little less stamina. So it's a little bit of a different kettle of fish there. And our folks are thinking about working with the 5th grade teachers about how do you kind of build up kids' tolerance for the test taking, right, without making the situation even worse. The other issue in grade 3 actually is more of a content issue, which is our grade 3 teachers were struggling to get to some of the units during the grade 3 year because they were spending a lot of time doing some review at the start of the year. We're trying to tighten that timeline up and help support them kind of get on with grade 3 curriculum faster so that the operations and algebraic thinking units can really fit into the arc of the year. Those are critical units for us. We want to really continue working on the geometry and measurement and data strands, even though we did better than we thought. We have room for growth there. And I think that's kind of it at elementary. We really didn't have a ton of stuff to worry about, which is great news. All right, elementary literacy. I was really happy to see strong scores continue in the literacy area, especially because literacy is getting a lot of attention in the media nowadays about different literacy programs and things about how to teach kids how to read. And I think what we saw in our literacy is language usage and reading were strengths. Writing, specifically around conventions, was a relative focus area, but still, even though for us it's a relative weakness, it's very strong when you compare across the state. And I think that speaks to the fact that we have a fairly broad and comprehensive approach to curriculum. We don't rely on any single program to do all the work for us. So while we have foundational literacy work that happens with one curriculum program, we use another for more higher order thinking. And we are looking to add a third program more comprehensively that's going to help with the conventions of language issue. So conventions of language are your mechanics, grammar, usage, things that you used to have to do by diagramming sentences and things like that back in the old days. We are not going back there, don't worry. And I can talk a little bit about what we're thinking we will do. You'll look and see this expansion of the Patterns of Power curriculum in grade 3 and 4. It's already starting to take hold a little bit in grade 5. That is a new kind of curriculum resource that deals with exactly this language conventions approach. And what's nice is it's actually an approach we've been using at the high school for quite a long time with really nice effect. And they've sort of built it out for middle school and elementary now. And unlike the old days where you'd learn, parts of speech, or you'd learn a lot of rules and then you'd try and figure out how you're supposed to apply them, this kind of reverses the process and is a way that feels much more organic for kids to learn about conventions. They actually learn to notice patterns in language, to sort of connect those patterns to meaning and structure. And then only after they kind of get the hang of the pattern, then you learn what to name it. You learn what an appositive is after you practice making a bunch of appositives, right? That kind of thing, instead of trying to get the abstract thing first and then generate it after the fact. It's a really interesting and nice approach, and it seems to work well from what we've seen. Some other issues that came up had to do with test navigation. So especially with our little guys, you have to actually scroll a bunch to see different parts of the reading comprehension. And on a little Chromebook, they have to get used to going back and forth and scrolling back and forth to answer questions. I mean, it's frankly not a great test design for young students especially, but given that that's what we have, we want to help them actually make the best of it. And what else was there? Yeah, that was pretty much it. Sort of a lot of test format and convention stuff for elementary. I can breathe for a second if anybody has an immediate question, or I can just keep plowing ahead.
This is great. Keep going.
All right, keep going. Middle school math. This is an interesting one. So what emerged as strengths across the arc of all middle school were interesting. Ratios and proportional relationships. That was a nice one to see as a strength because it's so critical and it's something we've been kind of working on. Absolute value, linear equations, another big one. A focus area, but one we expected, was in statistics and probability. That is, again, the sort of thing that got a little bit shortchanged during our hybrid year. Another nice bit of news is geometry scores, even though they're not where we want them yet, they're improving, and we're seeing sort of higher rates of student growth in those buckets too. So that's really cool. Math recommendations are interesting too. When you look at the question, item analysis kind of questions, it's hard to see one big area where there's like a big weakness. Like it's not like algebra is the weakness or numeracy issues or whatever. It's more like little pieces here and there. And we really think that what this comes down to is a misalignment of some of our backbone curriculum resources. We use Big Ideas math in grades 7 and 8. It's just not as well aligned with the state frameworks as we want. So currently, the math department at the middle school is piloting some additional resources. That's happening in conjunction with the math review. And we really think we're going to end up, at the end of the day, with a stronger kind of backbone curriculum resource that will help teachers make sure we get all the little pieces in the right places, if that makes sense. We'll be looking at some pre and post assessment data to see the impact of that pilot in real time. Middle school English, we saw sort of similar things to across the state, but some really interesting things too. So strengths were reading and literature and conventions of language, surprisingly. I'm just struggling with it elementary, and all of a sudden kids are like, ooh. Some focus areas were in reading of informational text, so nonfiction text, and in writing. And we also saw variable performance in standard areas. So you might see something that falls into the same bucket, but where our kids were falling down had to do with depth of knowledge. So they may be able to understand, for example, what's the main idea of something, but then actually identifying evidence that shows that's the main idea. That's a struggle. One really kind of great response to some of this information we've already started on. So our middle school humanities department head helped lead a professional development for our English teachers together with science and social studies. And they looked at all the test scores from 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade around this issue of informational text, nonfiction text, because that reading happens not just in English, it happens a lot in science and social studies. Educators looked at the data, they looked at strengths and areas for growth, and then course partners took some time to use what they had noticed to start to plan strategies for instruction. So how can we pull more resources from some of our online databases for really good informational texts to be using in our classes, so kids are getting more practice with reading. How do we make sure the kinds of questions that we ask are really high-level questions that are pushing kids and they're aligned to state standards? How do we make sure we ask questions in a way where we're varying our word choice so that we're not in a rut using the same word like defend all the time, and then if a student gets a term like justify on a test, they're not quite sure how to manage that. So some interesting things coming out of that. That's work that's already started. All right, at the high school level, the screen is so big I don't need my glasses. It's awesome. I feel 20 years younger. Thank you. The strengths were in essay writing in kind of particular areas and in reading in particular areas, and these are sort of the sub-areas that they identified. And again, you know, that sentence patterning, which has been in use at the high school for a long time, is focused on grammar and convention. So you see the impact of some of that strong work that's been going on for, you know, decades, really. Some of the areas for improvement at the high school were in idea development, and that's sort of how do you actually sort of develop an idea over the arc of a longer piece of written work. But also on comparing two pieces. Now this is an interesting one. So if we look back here, it says writing across more than one text is an area of strength. That can be true, that you can write and pull from more than one text, but what our students are struggling with more is the kind of compare and contrast style writing, so it's a very specific form that we need to sort of dial in and work on. Okay. Our math analysis is still in progress, so they haven't sort of sent me their final stuff yet. But I will say, as part of the math review team, we did talk a little bit about what are we seeing in the standards, and had some really good conversation about the importance of focusing on two things. One is when we see areas of relative weakness in the MCAS, being careful not to spend a lot of time on things that aren't high leverage for kids over time. So we want to make sure that if it's a weakness, but it's like a box and whisker graph or something like that, that's not going to get a ton of play, we might be able to just take a deep breath. But if it's something that is really important, to make sure we're focusing on that. And the second thing that came up in that is there are a number of topics, because the MCAS happened fairly early at the high school, that just plain happen after the test. We don't think it makes sense to blow up our kind of scope and sequence of curriculum for the sake of an assessment. We just don't think that's the right thing to do for kids.
Something has to be taught after the test.
Yeah. several things, in
Several
fact,
things.
as near as we can tell. But one example of an area where we saw some lower scores in terms of, you know, relative performance, you know, linear, quadratic, and exponential models, we want to make sure that's really solid. So if we see something that's a little bit lower there, we want to lean into it. Okay. So I'm expecting another update for you. It'll be a very short one next month, just to let you know about what's going on in math. And at that time, we'll be closer to being able to give you a quick update about where we are with the math review too. So the timing will be nice.
Thank you. Any questions?
I think
I
she's
got-
still
yeah,
going.
I'm still going, I'm sorry.
What about science?
Quick on the science front. So I'm not even going to talk about 5th grade science because they did so well. They were just fantastic. So there's really not much to say there. The 8th grade science, I want to say, did improve substantially relative to comps and was, again, 11th in the state. But they did notice curriculum-wise a focus area was on waves. Turns out WAVES is a 6th grade topic, so they're thinking a little bit about how do you kind of do enough of a review to kind of prompt that in mind without, you know, basically reteaching all of 6th grade in short form right before the science test, which would be a terribly bad educational move. So they're looking for a way to do that. At the high school level, the bio test was really interesting. The performance was incredibly consistent across all the different domains of the test. If you look at ecology, evolution, heredity, just the scores are really tight, and the differential between us and the state was really tight. It's about 13-14% higher than the state across all those modules. The only thing that looks like it's leverageable on that end is actually constructed response. So our students were not doing as well on the more intensive writing parts. So that's something. You know, the science department's also looking at some things about the test itself, and are there ways we could help, other than the constructed response, think about ensuring kids are well prepared to manage the demands of the test. That one feels high stakes because you have to pass it.
Right.
And because it's bio, it's not just math, it's 1 year as a curriculum, and then you're moving on to something else. So we really want to get this one if we can.
If you have to retest, you've moved on to the next course.
Right.
Right.
So either you have to kind of review a course you've moved past, or you could take physics, right, as a test. Next time I will have a couple updates for you. Like I said, the update on the high school math will come next time. I'm waiting on that. And then we've started pulling together subgroup data, but I want to look at that in the context of comparable districts. And I also want to just say, when we share subgroup data, I want to do so sort of thoughtfully and respectfully. We are a district where some of our subgroups are very small populations, and so I want to sort of be thoughtful about not doing things that are going to call out individual kids or families in that process.
Yeah.
But I will have at least a high-level overview for you then.
Great.
That's it.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I know that, and this might be a loaded question, but I know that, you know, we look at the data and we sort of assess needs and adjust curriculum. That's sort of making the assumption that the test itself is a good indicator
Yes.
of where our gaps are.
Yes.
Do we feel confident in that?
It's a great question.
I told you, it might be
No, I mean,
loaded.
so I would say, you know, there's no perfect test, right? And there's also, but it's a good enough test that we can learn things from it. So I think we always want to sort of approach it as one piece of data among a lot of others. You know, we're now using that STAR assessment as
Yes.
a tool, grades K to 8, that's another piece of data. We have kind of our own assessment that we do. We have other indicators around performance that are important. So I would always want to keep it in the context of all of that. You know, it's interesting, in the arc of time, the MCAS has tried a number of times to introduce a social studies test. And that test has been like much maligned because it just, you know, has yet to be embraced as a decent test. So I think the state has tried really hard to make sure that the assessments that are put up are aligned with standards, you know, as far as an assessment can really evaluate student performance. They give you some good data. But, you know, it's not the be all end all. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Any other questions?
Maybe for next time.
Sure.
I'd like to just have like a step back on like what's the aha, like other aha. This is kind of like great.
Yeah.
I just mean like, for example, we made a decision more from a budget perspective. We made decisions to do a lot of tier 1. We made decisions to do interventions. We've now gone through this crazy thing called COVID, and now
Yes.
just on the other hand of that, like
Yeah.
reflections on if you look at this data, does it
Yeah.
inform anything about interventions, anything like that? That would be
Yeah.
it'd just be interesting to hear that,
Yeah,
particularly
great.
as we go into budget season.
Yeah, it would be for sure. And I was going to tell you something. I'm trying to remember if this is relevant to what you're saying or not. No, I don't think it is. I had a story for you.
I know
but
it's
I was going to
yeah.
jam in there somewhere. And
I know
it
it's
was
not always hard
heartwarming,
one, but it'd be
really.
interesting, right?
Yeah.
You've had all this research, but now we've gone through this,
Yeah.
you know, data.
Yeah, and I think, you know, some of what we're going to see, especially with regards to the middle school, where we've added more
Yeah.
intervention staff over the arc of the last year, I think this year's assessment and next year's are going to be really interesting from that perspective, because that's where, you know, we've actually had a real school year. We've had time where some of those interventionists have actually been able to be interventionists instead of being pulled into classrooms because of staffing shortages. So I think those are things we'll have to see how they play out.
I think it's a great question, and I will say, just with like the historical view, I remember when we were adding elementary math specialists, and we definitely, like, we could say, we
Yeah.
can see this impact, and that's part of the theory of action, right,
Right.
at the middle school. So I think it's an important thing to look at.
Right. It's also true, I mean, with regard to sort of the literacy kind of stuff that's going on out there, a lot of the hubbub is around a particular kind of curriculum resource that we happen to use. One of the things that I think makes it workable here in Westwood is because we have such a high level of specialist support too, to make sure that when we're using curriculum resources, we use them thoughtfully and not blindly, and that they are sort of backed up with some real expertise and professional development and supplemented with other things that need to be there. So that all happens because of those folks. So.
I just have asked this before, I know, because a number of years ago, I was looking at the things, and they had special ed, math, English, and science.
Yep.
And science did poorly relative to, special ed was pretty close to everyone else. And I don't know if that's possible to look at that. And my curiosity was, if special ed was wider here, what about other towns? Are other towns doing better? Second question, this is something I don't know if I get an answer to, but I often wondered, could we evaluate some of what we're doing by survey graduates with questions like, what courses at Westwood High really made you one of the best engineers, or one of the, I think, I'd like to, are there things we're doing that made a difference? The kids recognize that I was so well prepared, as another form of evaluation.
Yeah.
And finally, in the English, I loved the 8th grade student that won a book award against adults. And I've always, did we train him as our system? Or,
Yes, we did, Charlie, we did.
or could we use him to train other kids to be, I mean, that was unbelievable. And this is the middle of COVID, he's writing a book, and so it'd be wonderful to figure out what we taught him that could be shared more widely. Anyway, I think, thank you very much for doing
Thank
this
you.
work. It's very
Lot of work.
important, and it's incredible what you're able to tease out of this.
And thanks to all of our
All the
specialists and
heads.
department
Yes.
heads and teachers who are on the data teams.
Thank all of them
It is
for
a lot of work.
all the help, too. We have some school calendar dates to look at.
Yes. So I just want to clarify, so all we're doing tonight is looking to see if we have the right days identified on the calendar. Later, after we get this solidified, then we drop in the early release days. Obviously, we don't have start times listed here. I had talked last month about the idea of just including maybe on the back of the printed calendar, a list of different religious and cultural observations, So that isn't here tonight. But what we did is we went ahead and we have the students' first day on the Wednesday before Labor Day, so the teachers would start the 2 days before that. We have, Harley and I have counted the days multiple times, and we believe it is 180 days. We have checked February and April break are the right weeks to coincide with holidays. We think it works. And you can see here, by starting before Labor Day, that would make the students' last day with no snow days, Thursday, June 13th, still have room to have a snow day and not pop into the next.
And you've checked with your favorite weather forecaster.
Yes, right, if he can prognosticate this far. So, there's where we are.
All set. So,
Yeah, there's
That's
one
good.
typo, I think it's the 22nd, not the 23rd for Thanksgiving, the early dismissal. That's the Wednesday.
You are correct.
Yes.
All right, see, this is why
See,
there's many
Harley?
eyes on that, okay. I don't think we've gotten the calendar right on the first try, ever.
That's okay.
We were going for it this time, but.
And then I assume like we did this year, the Friday before Christmas will be, or the
Yes.
break will be
Yes.
short, or whatever, professional
So
development day.
I think we liked that. So
okay.
when we put in the early
Yeah.
release days, that week we would make it the Friday.
Okay, great.
okay, any other questions on that? We move on?
I'm wondering, I think we had talked before about like the potential of surveying the community. Is there any appetite for that, about the whole like before Labor Day versus after Labor Day start?
Yeah, we talked about doing that. I mean, what I reflected is that the last time we did that, it literally was a
like
It was
split.
50.
split. It was
Yeah.
literally 50-50.
Yeah.
Now, that was a few years ago.
Right.
So
I'd be
maybe,
interested. I don't know.
maybe times have changed. I
I
mean,
feel like there are a lot of strong opinions about
yeah,
it.
I mean, it might be interesting to do that. I would suggest we could do that and think about that in terms of revising maybe guideline
The
that we
guideline.
had. What I heard from the committee last month, but correct me if I'm wrong, is that for this year, we thought, given where the way it fell with the days of the week and trying to keep things,
Going into the next week.
yeah, not going into the next week, particularly then with Juneteenth,
Right,
right? We could potentially get bumped.
pretty hard.
I mean, you know, we could actually get bumped to the last week in June,
Right,
Right.
which I think would be
yeah.
grim
Nobody wants
for
that.
all involved.
Very
Yeah.
grim.
Yeah, I'd just be interested. I feel like, you know, people are so opinionated about that, and rightfully so. So I'd be interested to see kind of
Yeah,
like some
we can do that.
updated data in terms of what works best.
So this really does give us room, though, for what, 5 snow days to avoid going into the last week of June?
Correct.
If we stick with this. Okay.
Yes, and so we're required, actually, by DESE to build a calendar that includes 5 potential makeup days. Like, you have to show that you can do that. And so we did. So that would, if we had 5, that would get us to June 21st.
And they won't allow virtual makeup days.
No, no more virtual days.
And it's probably for next year, I mean, on this conversation, but we'd also obviously want to get the staff. And then I'd also, the third piece I'd want to weigh in on is what do we actually think is best educational?
Yeah.
But that's but that's, you know, if we're going to
Yeah,
look at it.
no, I mean, that definitely is it. I mean, we've talked about this in the past, that a lot of the national testing, the AP tests and stuff, they come at a certain time of year, and schools in other parts of the country start much earlier than we do.
Right.
So it just gives us more teaching time before that moment.
All set on that? Moving on to.
So can I just clarify,
Excuse-
so this is a discussion item, so we'll move it to an action next month?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, great.
The potential start time scenarios.
Okay.
We did actually at our office hours ask the committee members, did they know the time difference? If B, they did, they knew how many minutes. They were so well
Very
informed.
impressive, she had it down, yeah, so. So we did put things out for public comment, in the event that people couldn't come tonight to comment, but wanted to comment to the committee, and I pass it along to you.
So that was, I mean, I can give a quick summary.
Yep.
I think as of this morning, we had like 66 or 65. We went and categorized them. Out of that 66, 36 were in support of B. I think 11 were in support of either C or C2. 9 were just generally supportive. They didn't really say which option. 5 didn't want any changes, and then 4 were kind of, I don't know, I couldn't really categorize. So it was, of the people that, opined, it was about a 3-to-1 from B to either of the C's. That's basically what the data showed. There was a lot of concerns about extended day, not surprisingly for the 2 C's. Or childcare, I should say.
Yes, and I would observe, I thought that the comments that we got through this round of feedback were remarkably consistent with what we've heard in the community forum, in staff forums, and we discussed that last month. But I was curious to see if it would be different, and it did not seem different.
Any questions about?
One thing
anybody?
I didn't see comments about, but I heard comments about in the community was around the dismissal, whatever the dismissal time is, and how it correlates with the preschool dismissal time.
So we do need to take a look at that, and so of course the preschool doesn't have buses, right? So it doesn't factor in the same way the others do, but we do want to make sure that the preschool dismissal isn't happening at the same time as the high school dismissal and all the student cars. I think we can work on that.
What's the preschool dismissal?
It is, I won't be able to get it exactly. That's what I was going to say. It is. It's pretty close to this, and so that is, something that we'll have to look at. We might have to back up preschool.
But we have more flexibility.
We have more flexibility there.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's probably like 5 or 10 minutes. If
Yeah,
you
it's
did
5 or 10
50, you'd get
Right.
a 20-minute difference, not.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we've looked at this for quite a while. We're talking about doing this next year. Does anybody feel like wanting to move on this tonight?
I think we should.
Would anybody like to make a motion to accept one of these?
I'll make a
Tony, you've been
motion.
working on this for a long time.
Or Tony, do you want to make a motion?
Sure. Well, yeah, first I'd like to thank there's a subcommittee I'd like to thank them. There was a number of members, a couple parents as well, Tammy McGowan and Jen Ryan. I'd like to thank Lemma, who has taught me a lot about busing, a lot about traffic, a lot, very complicated, but Lemma especially, the whole team did a lot, but I think Lemma obviously did a lot of that. So I'd like
definitely.
to thank her for efforts. I think based on what the committee we've talked about, based on kind of what we've heard from both staff, the community, I think I'd like to make a motion that we move to scenario B as kind of the start times for the start of the 23-24 school year.
I'll second that.
I'd like to call for a vote. Tony?
Yes.
Support, just
Yes.
on the vote.
Yeah.
Roll call.
Yay. Amanda?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes?
Tony?
Yes.
Yeah. I'd also like to, thank the committee. It's tremendous, but Tony, you came to this with this an idea about 3 years ago. And
This
we
is
said,
This is
it was like,
Tony's scenario.
how are you gonna do
Like
this?
right
More people got involved and more advice. It's a wonderful example of just taking something, and thank you for all the effort you put into it, and as
Thank
well
you,
as
Tony.
the people you got to help out.
My daughter will be very excited.
Do we need to make a motion to call it the Mullins schedule?
I don't know. I just don't want her to get too many detentions this year. So.
Okay, great.
The evaluation criteria.
Oh, no, that was just for this. So the next is
Anti-bullying policy.
anti-bullying policy. Yes. So this is the third reading, and so we have moved it as an action item for adoption of the revised policy.
Any questions on this policy? We've had it for quite a while now. Do I have a motion to accept this policy?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Tony?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Yep.
yeah?
Yes.
Yep. Any other items?
We have one more action item, and this is the third reading of the acceptable use policy. So it is up for a vote tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Second, Tony?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
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 Yes. That's it? Well, could I entertain a motion to?
I have
adjourn
new
the meeting?
business.
New business, please.
I
Go
have a
ahead.
breaking update. I just want to let everyone know the girls varsity volleyball team won tonight.
Oh,
wow.
Round 2 of the playoffs.
Congratulations.
And so they are moving on. It's in overtime?
What's in overtime?
Volleyball.
Wait, what's in overtime?
Field hockey.
Field hockey.
Oh, field hockey.
Oh.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
They're out.
I mean, I'm listening very carefully.
They're out in Western
Oh my
Mass,
goodness.
Yeah.
on the other side of
So-
Amherst.
If I get an update.
Yes,
Yes,
please, please.
yes.
Okay, great. It's exciting.
So very exciting.
Congrats to
Yay.
volleyball.
Congrats to
And,
volleyball.
we're
Moving
rooting-
on.
We're rooting for field hockey
Field
from
hockey.
afar.
I know.
so Great.
Any other new business, or
Can't compete with that.
I get a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second, yep.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.